Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my in-depth analysis of all my games at AltiBash 2, which is the second tournament run by an Altrincham gaming club. Second one I've been to there. I think it's the only. I don't think I've done any of the others. This is the second tournament in the space of a couple of weeks that I've taken my Undead to. I tweaked the lists a little bit, as some of you may have seen from my other videos recently. But before I go into the list, in fact, first of all, let's just have a look at this beautiful image of me standing there, very majestic looking, with my new shaved head look, which is growing back quite rapidly, I might add. Also, the old screen share is being much more cooperative than it was last time. It's not automatically turning to black if I click on any other window, so I can actually interact with the chat a little bit. So I can see that there are quite a few people in there already. But just to give you a bit of info on this tournament, 2,000 points. Using the Clash of Kings pack, a couple of notable things actually. One of them, if you time out during the game, you don't auto lose. All that happens is that you can't roll any more dice or move. You can just pivot on the spot, I think. I think that's all you're allowed to do. So dice down pretty much. So, and another thing actually, there was a £5 donation which went to charity, which would buy you one reroll per game of up to 2 dice, not including the roll for first turn or the roll for turn 7. So things that had to be on your turn rather than kind of neutral rolls like that. And they had to be rolled at the same time, those 2 dice. So it could be used to avoid the dreaded double 1 when rolling to get rid of a unit, or you could use it for surge or attacks if it was really crucial for you. And my thinking with that was, well, it's for a good cause. It's for a local children's hospital or something. So I'll donate £5, get my little golden token. And then if I come up against anyone that hasn't donated, then I just won't use it because I don't want to have an advantage over them. But as far as I remember, all my opponents did also donate. So they also had the ability to get the reroll. So it was available to both of us in each game. And you'll see that it did actually come into play a fair bit as we go along. So let's dive into my 2,000 point list first of all, shall we? As we look at some deployment from game 1, you can have a look at some of my lovely models there. So 2 regiments of skeleton warriors with no upgrades on them at all. I found that it's quite decent little unit there for just 90 points with nerve 16. That if you stick them somewhere as a bit of a roadblock, people can't just commit one tiny throwaway unit to them because it won't be enough to get rid of them. They have to commit reasonable amount of resources to destroy them. So I quite like those. You can actually see the wraiths there in the corner, which are spirit hosts. Well, I was using them as spirit hosts previously when I used to play Undead in Warhammer 8th edition. And for some tournaments, they probably wouldn't allow this because they don't meet the minimum model requirements and they don't fill up enough of the base. But I did check with the organizer before this, so it was okay. Those are the other unit of skeletons right there. I think you can see me moving the arrow around there. Now, you remember at the last tournament, I took a single zombie legion. For this one, 2, the double legion. Bam, bam, bam. Double-barreled zombie legion goodness. So you can see I actually packed in some of my ghouls in there because they don't look too out of place, just to fill up the numbers, and more gravestones in the units. And a bit of a necromancer on a big base with zombies crawling out around his feet there, just to fill up more space. So 2 big zombie legions, one of them still with the brew of sharpness, because that +1 to hit on 40 attacks, sometimes more attacks than that if I can get a flank with them, is huge. +1 to hit on that is just massive. And of course I can't put the same item on both units, so for the other legion I put the brew of strength on them, which is basically just +1 to wound, effectively, which is almost as good. So, what else have we got in this picture here? We've got my 2 necromancers at the back there, the friendly necromancer with the inspiring talisman, and the evil necromancer in purple with Bane Chant. I went for slightly cheaper options on the old necromancers this time, didn't give any of them the extra powerful surge, which may come back to bite me later on, you'll see. Also, you can see one of my vampires here, which is actually a Reaper Bones Bone Horror, which is representing a vampire on a Pegasus, who has ensorcelled armor just to get him up to defense 6, because I don't think defense 5 is going to cut it. And I did run into a few problems, actually, with these flying units. because before this tournament, all the flying units I've used had been individuals. So there's a lot more pivoting options that you have with those, because with an individual that's flying, you can just turn them to face any way you want, fly over there, and then pivot when you get there. Whereas these flying units are not individual, so they are nimble, so they can do one more pivot than usual, but you can't just turn to face any way you like before you start moving, so you are slightly more limited, and that caught me out a few times. You'll see as we go on. On to the next image. So you can see the other half of that zombie legion and my Soul Reaver cavalry. A regiment of those again with the caterpillar potion, same as last time. I'm relying on them to do some hard hitting, but their nerve isn't amazingly high, so they do go down not hugely easy. It depends what you put them into. You don't want to be matching them up with anyone who's got a lot of crushing strength. Then out there on the other flank, you can see I've got one small unit of werewolves and my other vampire who does have the wings of Honeymaze. So 2 flying vampires, but this one is an individual, and he is going to be running around with the werewolves, just being all chummy with them for this game. Now, this first game, by the way, as I consult my detailed notes here, was Pillage. And I was against another undead player. So let's have a look at his army. And you can see some of the pillage markers as well as we look around the battlefield here. All those little green tokens are the pillage markers. His army, he's definitely got a vampire somewhere, and he's also got a revenant king, I think, on a horse. He's got zombie trolls, werewolves, wraiths. His army's much more elite than mine. Now, on the other side, he's got a vampire and a dragon, which is slightly more powerful than my Pegasus vampire. He's got more wraiths, a small unit of revenant cavalry, which are the less powerful cavalry, and just a big horde of zombies. So not quite legion worthy, but he's gone for elite. Now this was the same high-ranked player that I barely lost against in the previous tournament. So I had the immediate chance for some retribution. And you can see that one of the pillage tokens is all the way up there in the top right, and he's got one sitting right underneath his zombies. So my strategy for this game, this was going to be my strategy for the whole tournament, actually, because if you followed my last tournament video, you'll have seen that I'm very, very patient with my undead. I kind of sit back, unless I'm going to be completely shot to bits by sitting back. I try to sit back and kind of set, it's not really a trap because the opponent knows it's coming, but as soon as they move into range, hopefully I've got superior surge to the enemy, and I've also got some fairly fast units without surging, the flying vampires, the wraiths and the werewolves and so on. So I'm hoping that they'll have to move into range at some point, at which point I'll just surge everything forward in one big go, both legions piling in at the same time, and just try and kill everything in the last 3 turns maybe. But I found at the last tournament that actually resulted in me not wiping out as many units as I would have liked, which possibly cost me a few tournament points overall. I don't know whether it cost me any games, but for this tournament I was thinking I'm going to try and be a lot more aggressive and try and get the killing done earlier on. So high risk, high reward tactics, and you'll see whether that works here. So you can see he's pushed one unit of wraiths out there onto his left flank on my right, and that's opposite my werewolves and vampire with the wings of Honeymaze. You can see where the other token is right there, and the old chess clock. And there's a nice view of the 2 battle lines moving towards each other. I've just got some little cheap skeleton unit over on that side protecting that flank because there is a token over there behind them. And I'm hoping to have the one in the middle because I've got just a big block of hard to kill infantry there. 3 units right there, backed up by the necromancers. So I'm hoping they're going to be tough to shift from there, although he has got some hard hitting units coming in. Werewolves are particularly nasty against my zombies because they only have crushing strength 1, but that's all you need against zombies. That's really the ideal amount of crushing strength to have against them, because then you're only on 2s. If you have any more than that, you've just wasted your points, really, fighting against zombies with them. So this was quite a big deal over here on this flank, because you'll see my vampire's not there. That is because my vampire charged out into the open to take out his wraiths, which I successfully did. I did kill them with the vampire, because I was thinking, after I kill them, he's obviously going to be charged by the cavalry and the dragon vampire. But I was thinking, you know what, on average, I think I might just survive that. And if I do, I'm going to set up for the most furious countercharge known to man. So I had my werewolves ready to strike, had my cavalry just within range to charge the flank of his cavalry if they got stuck and didn't kill the vampire. Because if they did kill it, they could always just hop back a little bit and avoid being charged. But I was hoping that they would be stuck there fighting it. Of course, they would be able to pivot as well if they successfully killed the vampire, which would take them out of range. But if they were wedged there, I would have been able to charge them. And then I moved one of my zombie legions up in this direction with my necromancers behind them, ready to go for a surge, which would take them either into range of that unit to attack, or just in range to stop them charging into the flank of my knights. So there's a clear strategy here, but the high risk part of it unfortunately failed because the vampire died from that combined attack. He did get quite a good roll for the nerve to get rid of him twice, so that was bad. I think he rolled something like 10 each time to get rid of him. So wow. And of course I can't use my reroll on opponent's dice, which would have been handy there, because that has really put the cat amongst my pigeons there, because that's quite an expensive and versatile character taken out of the game there. So we'll see how I recover from that, won't we? In the center, you can see my other units are just kind of having a stare down with his trolls there. And let's move on. Right, we've got more action here. So what happens is, I think I do actually manage to get these charges off because he can't move away fast enough after killing my vampire. So my werewolves do get in on his vampire on the dragon, put a little bit of damage on it, and my cavalry get in on his cavalry, and I think take them out in one go with ease. Now, this is something that screwed me up a little bit. What I was saying earlier about remembering the pivoting on flyers that aren't individual. So I pushed my zombie legion up in that direction, and I was planning that if the surge came up a little bit short, this vampire wasn't in range to charge anyone, this one on a Pegasus. So I was going to have him facing back towards that legion. So if need be, I could give them the last couple of inches just to get in there. But unfortunately, of course, with the pivoting rules and how limited it is with a non-individual, he was stuck facing that way. But I thought, you know what, I'm still going to go for it. But I rolled woefully low on my surge. I needed slightly above average to make it. So this is the kind of high risk, high reward scenario I was talking about. And unfortunately, I just didn't roll very well at all. So even re-rolling 2 of my surge dice, if I, let's say, got 1 more inch, it wouldn't have made any difference whatsoever, because it's still not blocking in that zombie unit of his. So that's going to be quite fatal, because that's opening up the flank of my cavalry, and they can dish out a lot more than they can take. Even though they're defense 6, a lot of dice are going to be coming at them if that zombie horde gets into their flank. So that's not filling me with confidence right now. So a couple of those early moves really didn't pay off. And as you can see, of course, the zombie trolls are set up nicely to get into the flank of my zombie legion there now. They're kind of left flapping in the wind right there. So wow, it's not looking good at all at the moment. So I'm really going to have to scramble to get anything out of this game. Over on this side, his werewolves are just kind of chilling. I'm kind of threatening them with my wraiths and my skeletons, but really that's beneficial for him because those werewolves are worth less than the combined value of those 2 units. So if they're just engaged in a stare down for the whole game, that's more of my points out of the action than it is his. So yeah, in the middle, this zombie legion is just not really doing much. They're out of range because his zombie trolls are probably going to be able to steal the march on them. And look what happens. Now, I have it on good authority that my opponent for this game did actually practice against my list with someone else playing my list during the week prior to this tournament. So he said one thing he learned was not to just chip away slowly at these big units like the legions. You really have to pile everything in on them at once, which is exactly right. Because very rarely can any one unit take down a zombie legion in one hit. It would take miraculous rolling for virtually any other unit to take them out. So piling in 1 troll horde, zombie troll horde in the flank, 1 in the front, wraiths, and the Revenant King, I think that was as well. All of those in there are probably going to extinguish that particular zombie flame in one big, fat, juicy combat. So my confidence is not very high at the moment at this point in the game. Let's see if I can salvage anything though. And yes, the other thing I feared did happen. Zombie horde flank charge into my cavalry. And of course, that was backed up by a couple of vampires as well. So that is also not going to end well. So that high risk at the beginning of the game, that failure did not pay off at all. I went into that with the mindset of thinking the reward, if I get this right, is going to be huge. But if it fails, I wasn't really prepared for the fallout of it failing. Very, very high risk strategy. And as you can see here, it's got very, very crunchy. He's managed to kill off one of the zombie legions, and now he's closing in, smashing into my other legion in the rear with the zombie trolls. I think I probably killed one of those zombie troll units, but the other one's still here. And I've got skeletons there being charged in the flank by wraiths. My wraiths are not really doing anything. It's all going terribly wrong. So, yeah, he did actually only waver these knights with the first round of attacks, but that's really still going to be the end of them, because not being able to do anything next turn, they're not going to be able to get any wounds back with their life leech, so next time he hits them, they're going to die. But I can set up some countering here with my vampire on Pegasus, who hasn't been able to get into the fray yet because of his limited maneuverability, and the werewolves ready to strike as well. And both zombie legions are dead, and I've just got a unit of skeletons stuck in the middle on their own. It's not looking good at all. And going the next image here, I think my vampire on a Pegasus, I can't remember whether it actually managed to kill anything, but I think he kind of boxed it in maybe with his vampire. So not looking tasty at all. Those trolls are dead in the corner, I think. Yeah, pretty sure they are. And his zombies are now moving in. And yeah, it's just a mopping up operation for him now. He doesn't even need to worry about the scenario because there's still quite a few turns left. And it's not looking good whatsoever. Yeah, you can see he's just crunching into all my units there. They're all about to die. The werewolves are getting charged. Vampire on a Pegasus being multi-charged. They're about to go down. Wavered werewolves, so they'll go down next turn, of course. And he's actually thinking about the objectives a little bit, just in case. So he's sitting on that one with his vampire dragon. And I actually charge my skeletons off the objective, just to kind of lure him in with his werewolves. Because I thought, you know what, if I'm going to die, I might as well try and take something with me. And if he doesn't kill them in one hit, then I could strike back and get a lucky go at them and kill them. But I think the skeletons actually died as a result of that. And there's some kind of gadget there on the table, which I'm going to assume is an impassable piece of terrain. Actually, it's been used to prop up his trolls, I think, there, because they were hanging over the edge of the hill. And he's just going for the kill on my necromancers now. So as soon as they go, I'm going to have absolutely nothing left. And yeah, that's how it ended. I think that's the last picture of this game. Oh no, that one is. So he's sitting on various objectives, and he's got werewolves alive, killing my skeletons. And yeah, that was the last image for that game. So I lost absolutely all my models. That one high-risk move in the first couple of turns, not paying off, caused a chain reaction which led to the demolition of everything. Oh dear, oh dear. So he killed everything. I killed about 400 and something points, which was just enough to stop it being a 20-0. So it was 19-1 in tournament points. So I've still maintained my record of never being 20-0, which isn't bad. And moving on to the next game, I was pretty sure I wasn't going to be up against any of the kind of top-tier, absolute monster veteran players, because they surely wouldn't lose by a margin like that in round one, you would think. And before I go on to that, I'm going to, let's see what happens if I click on the chat. Is it going to destroy the screen share? It doesn't look like it. So let's see who's in here, shall we? Let's look at the active users. Dino Titan Edition, Do Not Care 121, Mickey Genva, Auric Love God. A few people chatting away in there. Let's see, anyone got anything constructive to say so far? Let's see. There's got to be one. Dino Titan Edition, I got to admit, I like Andy's match reports. There we go. Well, that's the compliment I needed. Pushing on to the next game then. So, this next game was the push scenario, in which you're allocated a certain number of tokens, and you can place them in your deployment area. And they can be on units at the start, and the idea is to get those tokens into the opposing half, and there's one in the center of the table as well. So as you can see here, I've put one on my skeletons. I think I put two on this unit of skeletons, actually, over on the left flank, backed up by werewolves and a vampire on Pegasus. And that's one thing I kind of picked up from game one, because my opponent put his dragon vampire behind another unit right behind them, so that he can't be charged, but he can charge over their heads because he's taller, but there's no space for anyone to get in there to charge him. My opponent was undead again. I seem to be playing an awful lot of undead lately, but this was a very, very elite undead list. He's got 2 units of Soul Reaver Cavalry there, which are just as powerful as my Soul Reaver Cavalry, and a vampire on a horse. And in the center, he's got 2 units of Soul Reaver Infantry, which are the ultimate elite undead infantry, which, like the Soul Reavers, can dish out, like the cavalry, I should say, can dish out a ton of pain, but can't take quite as much as certain other units, because their nerve isn't amazingly high, these kind of vampiric regular units. He's also got a couple of units of wraiths there as well at the front. You can see there's the central token. I've got one on this zombie legion as well. He's put his tokens onto his Soul Reaver infantry. And the thing with putting tokens on units is that it slows them down to speed 5, which isn't an issue for certain units. And also it stops them being able to do things like fly around, which wasn't a huge issue. I think the Soul Reaver infantry might actually be speed 6 normally, so he had to slow them down. He didn't have any cheap throwaway units that he could put the tokens on, like I did with my skeletons, which I'll just show you again over there. I piled 2 tokens on them because we had 3 each, I think. Okay, so you can see that I'm really outnumbering him big time, but his units are so elite, I'm not sure how it's going to go. I am thinking that if I can get the charge off with my zombie legions into his other units, into his elites, then just throwing that many dice at them, even though they're high defense, I should be able to really cripple them. Because like I said, their nerve isn't amazingly high. They really need to dish out the pain before they're taking it. So that's what I'm hoping to do with my zombies, just drop pain straight on them. And my cavalry as well are going to be faster than a lot of their units. But you can see they've already taken 4 damage there. And that is as a result of, I don't know if you can see it yet, I think he's got some werewolves over there, being very sneaky. But I've got a vampire, my Honey Maze Wings vampire on the hill, countering them. And he does have a catapult. As you see, my beautiful organized piles of dice piled into 20s for convenience. And yeah, you can see his catapult there at the top. That's what did damage to my Soul Reavers. And I think that catapult actually hit in the first 3 turns, which is very, very good shooting indeed. But I don't think it inflicted any fatal blows with those shots, though. So I think more people just dropped into the chat, actually. I see Stu Gibson. I see Samuel Barker. I see Mr. Darren Parks. So a couple of Kings of War community legends there, of course. So my strategy here, my units with the tokens, I don't want them to be particularly fighting, especially these skeletons that have got 2. That's why I've got my werewolves and my Pegasus vampire over there, because they're fast, and hopefully I'll be able to get the jump on some of his units, and then the skeletons can just kind of chill and hide, and then just go wherever the fighting isn't, essentially, because I've got this house here which I could maneuver around, and I've got those wraiths just ready to strike as well in case I need any backup over here. Over on that side, I'm a bit more confident. Soul Reaver infantry are beastly, but like I said, I think my legions are probably a good matchup for me against them, because they can take such a pounding and they can throw so many dice back, which those guys don't like at all. They don't like it up them, that cold steel. Werewolf Vampire Showdown, which I'm going to have to, he's moved right into my charge range there. He's got one of the tokens. I'm going to have to go after him. I think he came in, and I'm not sure if he had that one from the beginning or he picked it up. I think he must have brought it with him. And then I'm going to charge them shortly. It's all going down on this side, as you can see. I can't remember who actually initiated all these charges, but my werewolves have gone into some of his cavalry, my vampire's gone in, and my skeletons as well. So this must be probably on my turn, these charges. I decided just to try and get the jump on them. But I didn't do a great deal of damage. I certainly didn't get rid of any of them. So I'm thinking it's going to be quite a painful strike back now, because they do have that crushing strength, which is a nice backup for when they've lost their thunderous charge, which they did, and I really didn't want them to bring that to bear, especially on my vampire. Let's see, also in the chat, George Kirk, who I believe was one of the players at the tournament as well. Judging by Saturday, everyone needs werewolf models, he says. Yes, there are a lot of people not using actual werewolves, I've noticed. But there were a few genuine werewolves. And you can see that, actually you saw just at the edge there, I moved my wraiths into position here, and I was trying to wrangle some way of surging them into the rear of that unit of Soul Reavers, but we determined it wasn't quite possible because I couldn't get my Necromancer in range. He was about 1/4 of an inch away, and if I pivot them to get them in range, at that point the angle they would be facing wouldn't be correct to get the surge into the rear. I would have just clipped the house, so it was impossible to do, unfortunately. So that was bad on my part, having the Necromancer I wanted to use to surge so far away from them. So that could cost me, we'll see. But my legions are still very much alive and kicking going forward. And you can see there's just a fight going on here between werewolves and vampire. I'm fairly confident I'm going to win that fight in the long run, because they've only got crushing strength 1. They do have a lot of attacks, so with a lucky roll they could potentially take me out. But they're not inspired, the vampire self-inspires. So, and I'm going to be getting wounds back every time I hit them. So in the long run, I think I'm going to take that fight and then hopefully have a couple of turns to spare to get the vampire back into the action. Over on this side here, well, his countercharge was quite furious. He wavered both my werewolves and my vampire on a Pegasus. So you can see that is why the skeletons have decided they're just going to back away from this little fight here, and I'm going to bring the wraiths over this side just to cause a little bit of a distraction and hopefully escape with my skeletons, because he's going to break through both those units next turn, I'm fairly confident, barring terrible rolls, and then the skeletons are just going to be easy pickings with 2 tokens in my half. So if he kills the skeletons, he'd just take the tokens straight onto one of his units and he'd have them in my territory, so that'd be worth 4 points, which could be massive, so I can't afford that to happen. In the middle, I do actually get the initial charges off with one of my legions and my Soul Reaver cavalry into his Soul Reaver infantry, but I don't do a vast amount of damage though. I do a bit, so I'm chipping away at them, and I think in a war of attrition, overall I'm going to win here because these legions can take such a beating. And the one at the back, of course, is the one with the tokens. I don't want them getting in there and mixing it up, getting mauled, and just handing tokens over to the enemy. And you can see his vampire came in to help here as well. I think that's a vampire, but it might not be. I believe it was, though. Over on this side, my skeletons are fighting his wraiths, and these skeletons are actually holding up quite well. I was talking at the beginning about the skeleton regiments having their nerve 16. Defense 4 nerve 16 for only 90 points is really tough to shift. They don't dish out that much pain, but you have to actually put in some effort to take them out. If you look at something like wraiths that are only dishing out 10 attacks, then they only hit on 4s, I think, so you're only going to be getting 5 hits. So even if you wound with all of those, it's still a really tall order to take out this 90-point unit in one go. So I do like them, and you can see my vampire is consistently healing his wounds back because the dice has disappeared, so I'm definitely going to win that fight. Moving on. Now, I didn't actually charge into either of those units with my wraiths, and my opponent and I did have a little bit of a laugh about that, because he was saying, after I decided not to charge anyone, I just parked between them. He was saying that he really hoped I was going to charge one of the units, because that would have left the avenue open for the other one to move past and then get to within striking distance of the skeletons. But you can see that I've turned the skeletons round, moved them this way, and then I used the Necromancer to just surge them even further away from that whole mess there, because I'm going to need to play dancing round the house to avoid that cavalry until the end of the game, and I may have to throw the Necromancer into their path to block them at some point. So we'll see how that goes. I'm not looking forward to the outcome of that fight though, because they're probably going to shred those wraiths instantly. And in the middle there, you can see that the damage is totting up, and he's wavered my cavalry there, which isn't going to be nice for them, because then he's going to be able to hit them again. He's going to be life leeching, I'm not. So wavering these life leeching units is not good. The few units that Undead have that can actually be wavered, but there are a lot of them in this particular game, especially on his side. And you can see, I think I might have actually wavered his infantry there. because he's got a dice on top of his wound marker, so they must have taken a bit of damage, and I think I did waver them. So that zombie legion the damage is racking up though, but having them wavered is a huge deal because the vampire in the flank isn't going to be multiplying attacks, so he's going to have a tough time taking down the zombies on his own. And I've also got this unit as backup. So also his wraiths are stuck fighting my skeletons still, as you can see. So the fact that he's stuck there fighting them for so long means every time I do damage to them, they can't then just fly off and fight someone else or anything. They're just stuck there. And my vampire slowly whittling down the werewolves. I think they're up to about 9 damage there, and the vampire's only on 1. And I think they've been wavered as well, actually, so it's going to go even more in my favour. You can actually see some numbers on the chest clock there. 1950 it looks like I've got left, so we must be over halfway now. And look at this. I believe my opponent had already used his reroll token by this point, and wouldn't you just know it? Big pile of damage onto the wraiths, double 1. So those 2 hugely expensive units, that's about 600 points there, stuck on my 140 point unit. With a house next to them, they're just totally wedged in there, so I get a whole other turn to move my skeletons out of the threat range of that unit, out of both of them. So that is going to be terrible for him. And of course, I'm going to be able to actually attack him with the wraiths next turn as well, if I see fit. And here you can see I did use my reroll token successfully on those werewolves because I rolled a double 1 when trying to get rid of them with the vampire. And then I used the reroll token to have another go at it and successfully popped them, as they say. So their objective drops onto the floor, so they're not holding it in my half. So that's going to be good. And now the vampire can come and join in the fight, hopefully, because he's flying, of course, so he can get there quite rapidly. And look at this. So my cavalry are dead. One of his units of infantry are dead, and their token passed over into this zombie legion. I've got a zombie legion here with 2 tokens, his unit there with 1. So it's getting very, very close here. This unit did not want to be charged by his infantry while carrying 2 tokens, because it's an outside chance, but it is possible he could have taken them out in 1 hit, especially if the wraiths finish up the skeletons and come and join in. So I actually backed this unit away just out of their charge range and tried to plug the gap a bit with this unit here. I didn't want to be flank charged by them with this unit either, because he'd just pick that token up again, and then he's got his vampire there to help as well. My necromancers are just coming in mainly to provide inspiring with him, and then of course the Bane chant, which is really useful against these high defense armies. And yeah, I don't think I even chose to attack. It looks like I just sat there and just blocked both units, which is probably the right thing to do. And you can see my skeletons have gone around the other side of the house now. So they're not quite safe yet, but it's looking that way. They've got 2 tokens on them. He's got a vampire there that could charge them, but his cavalry are just totally stuck. And we're getting quite close to the end now. Yep, so we do go to turn 7 here. If it had just ended right there, I would have won because I had 2 on that unit. I had, let's see if we go back, I had 2 on there, 5, 6 tokens. He's only got 1, I think. And yeah, that would have been a win for me. But we do go to turn 7, so he has got a chance to steal this back. And he puts his wraiths and his infantry there, both into this zombie legion here, carrying 2 tokens. So I think the other one must have been popped by Mr. Vampire, probably. So that's not good, but my vampire's coming back to help. And if he kills this unit here, then he's going to be able to take both those tokens onto one of his units. So if he put them onto the wraiths, that would mean that he would be guaranteeing himself a draw, probably, because I've only got 1 turn left, and I would have to use the vampire to break one of those units and make them drop their tokens on the floor, so it would be 2 each on tokens. So yeah, if that zombie legion doesn't survive, I'm probably not going to win. Over on this side, his cavalry, yeah, there's just nothing they can do because they just got stuck there. So even though it's turn 7, they just can't close that distance to my skeletons fast enough. So I'm just sitting with 2 tokens there quite happily, under no threat whatsoever. And you can see this fighting going on here. He does put his vampire in as well. He really needs to destroy this legion in one go, in one fell swoop here. And look at that. He doesn't do it. He puts all that damage on them. There's 19 damage there. So it's still a difficult nerve roll to try and get rid of them, especially with the inspiring presence of the Necromancer and the Vampire as well, actually. So 2 inspiring guys there. So it was just, the odds were slightly against him to take out this unit with the amount of damage he put on it. And then in my last turn, I was able to countercharge into that Soul Reaver infantry, kill them, take both tokens off them. So I'm sitting pretty with 4 tokens on that Zombie Legion, 2 on the Skeletons, and I think he is on 0 tokens right now. So that's a win for me, most certainly. And I didn't manage to kill off the Wraiths with the Vampire, so it's lucky they didn't kill the zombies, because that would have meant a win for him if they were holding some tokens. And yep, his cavalry just totally wedged, stuck by the Wraiths, that double 1 after he'd already used his reroll. Skeletons also sitting pretty with 2 tokens. And his catapult was still alive, but yeah, not much that can do at the end there. So before we move on to the next game, I'll tell you exactly what the score was for that game. So, remaining points, he had quite a lot of points left alive because of those really expensive cavalry units and a vampire. So I only killed about 900 points, whereas he killed about 1,200-ish, which meant that he got a bonus tournament point. So that takes 1 off my win, because the default winning score is 15-5, and then you take into account kill points. So that turned it into a 14-6 win for me. So very, very pleased with that result. Of course, he got very unlucky with the Wraiths and that double 1. But then, on the other hand, also, had it just ended in turn 6, then he would have had no chance to catch them anyway. So I would have won if it had ended there. Going into turn 7, if he'd killed the zombies, then he could have got a win. But they just clung on. So got my first win of the day, which is usually what I aim for. If I can get 1 win, well, what I said at the beginning of the day was, I want to get 1 win and I want to get a flank charge with the Zombie Legion. I don't think I've accomplished that yet in the first 2 games, but I have got a win. So 1 objective nailed right there. So I'll just have a look at the comments before I go on to game 3. George Kirk says the charity reroll was really good for that kind of thing. Yes, it was. And it did make people, because you knew if you used it on anything other than a double 1 nerve roll, then there was a chance you were going to get 1 later and you're going to be kicking yourself. But if you hold on to them too long, then you're just going to be stuck there sitting with it at the end of the game, not used. Because the double 1, it doesn't come up every game. On average, there probably isn't a double 1 in the majority of games. So it's a tough one. When do you use that reroll? It does add an interesting dimension to the game. Okay, let's see. Darren Parks. Zombie Legions are ace. Yes, they are, which is why I'm considering adding a 3rd one at some point. Maybe a 4th, but that might be a little bit too much space they're filling up on the battlefield. But a 3rd one, I definitely want to try at some point. I think it'll just be hilarious. And they're not even that expensive in points. A Zombie Legion is the same point value as a giant. They're probably a lot better in most respects as well. 4 Zombie Legions would look amazing, yes. So on to game 3. This was Control, which is the scenario that kind of screwed me over at the last tournament because I had so many individuals in my list. I had so many points tied up in individual units that can't control areas. So the table is divided up into 6 squares, 2 feet by 2 feet. And for every one of those you control at the end, you get a point. But if you control the opponent's central area, you get 2 points. So the 2 key ones are obviously the 2 central areas. Your own, obviously, to stop the opponent getting 2 points, and the opponent's so you can get 2 points. And this game was against my regular opponent, who I've played against a zillion times. We even practiced our lists against each other for this tournament. So if he wants to be named, then he can, but we'll see if he makes himself known. Oh, we've got a new person there in the chat. We've got Dave Kitely commenting away, saying hello. Hello there. So I think a couple of the pictures were blurry for this deployment, so you might have to wait a second to see exactly where everything was. But you can see I've hidden my vampire behind a house because he had a cannon and a bombard because he's playing dwarves. Zombie Legion there, skeletons out on that side. and you can see he's got a flame cannon, or a flame belcher I think it's called, and he's got 3 hordes of the shield breakers, I think they are, so they're crushing strength 2, really big hordes, quite a lot of attacks, tough to crack. But it's a case of he's paid so many extra points to have crushing strength 2, and the main thing he's going to be coming up against is defense 3. So it's kind of a waste having all that crushing strength on them. So this is not exactly a nightmare matchup, because he will just mince through and do damage to them, but he could have been paying less points for a unit with just crushing strength 1 in this particular matchup. So that side of it is definitely slightly favourable. And here you can see the battle lines closing in on each other. My Soul Reavers can perch wherever they like, basically, in hedges, because they've got the Caterpillar Potion, so it doesn't matter where they charge from. And the Zombie Legions, I've sent these skeletons out there because I noticed he's got a couple of little individual, really annoying battle drills, which are really annoying, because if he sends them in the turn, he has to pick a turn to move into range of my units, because all my stuff is faster than his, because he's dwarves. He's only got 1 cavalry unit and it's on the other flank. So I'm going to be out charging him. So because I'm going to dictate when the charging takes place, the only way he can really do that is by just moving into my charge range with everything in 1 turn and just taking what's coming to him. So if he uses an individual battle driller to park right in front of one of my legions, he can block the devastating countercharge, potentially, because I can only overrun 6 inches at maximum past an individual. So that's what they're going to be good for. So I'm hoping to kind of get into a little showdown with the skeletons and kill that thing very, very fast before it comes to that. And I'm also not charging in willy-nilly with my cavalry, because A, don't want to get flank charged by anything, B, I don't want to go near that flame belcher. I'm quite terrified of that thing. So I'm just standing back, holding my ground here, because he's going to have to move everything into charge range if he wants to fight, and then I'll be able to spring the trap, which is more my usual style. Because with the surge, you can usually have more potential movement than the majority of infantry-based opponents you're going to come up against. And now you can see this left flank. He's really loaded this left flank with a ton of stuff. He's got Brock Rider Regiment, a big block of them. He's got a Flying Berserker Lord, I think it is. He's got the Steel Behemoth. He's got a King on a large beast, and he's got a Battle Driller. So he's put so many points out on that flank, and because of the nature of this scenario, I was dead arrowed in on the 2 central squares, because that's what screwed me over at the last tournament. So that was really in my mind the whole time through deployment. And when I saw him loading up this flank, I thought, I'll just put units over there, but I won't overload it. I'll put units over there that are going to be annoying. I won't overcommit. I'll just kind of slow him down, because I'm faster than him with all my units here, pretty much, apart from his Flying Berserker. So if he wants to get the charge in, he can only charge 1 unit, and then he's going to have to push everything else up and just accept my potential counter charges. But if I back up, and the Vampire with Pegasus is pretty tough to crack. So by the time he's cleared off this corner, hopefully it's going to be close to the end of the game, and he won't have enough time to get into the middle. And the skeletons are just there kind of as a backup. So if he needs one last roadblock to stop him getting into my central cube, as it were, and my Vampire's kind of chilling there, ready to get any flank charges on his units as they advance. It doesn't really matter the fact they're flank charges, but that's just the way it lines up. He's also got his 2 artillery pieces there, which actually, in the first turn, they were able to shoot my Soul Reaver cavalry, actually. And I think they might have put a bit of damage on them. But as you can see, I angled my Pegasus Vampire here intentionally to allow a tiny bit of a gap so he could charge me if he wanted with his Berserker, Flying Berserker Lord, because I thought, you know what, I'm going to win that matchup, so I might as well invite him in, because he's going to get there faster than the rest of his troops. And if he comes in, I think I'm probably going to mince him. I did actually underestimate how tough he is, though, because I thought the Pegasus Vampire might be able to take him in 1, maximum 2 turns, but he is actually quite robust, that guy. He's got really high nerve, as Berserkers tend to do. So you can see him measuring some distances there, either staying out of my charge range or intentionally moving in to within his own charge range and just accepting what's coming to him, because he knows he's got more points over here. So as soon as I move in, he's going to be able to combo charge Steel Behemoths and his King on a beast all into the flanks. So it's just going to be nasty. As soon as that engagement starts, it favours him. So I just want to hold it off as long as possible. In the middle, this big standoff favours me big time, I think, because as I said, I'm going to be dictating most of the charges here. So it just depends how sneaky he is with his individuals. And there is actually something that I do that's quite sneaky in a minute as well, which you will see. So you'll notice my vampire has landed behind his lines. He didn't actually attack anybody, he just landed right there. The only things that could charge him are his little standard bearers here. So they've only got one attack each. Chances of them damaging him and taking away his ability to fly are very, very slim. So I'm just leaving him there, just chilling, knowing full well that I can then kind of pick and choose whatever I want to charge next turn. So he's really going to have to up whatever he's doing. He's going to have to go on the offensive, because otherwise the vampire is going to start picking things off, because he's got his artillery in the top left, he's got his flame belcher right there, and even individuals are going to triple their attacks against those things. So that's my thinking there. I'm just going to be able to pick a target and just eat it with the vampire. He's got his flame, he's got his battle driller there, which I've sent the skeletons out after. So they're hopefully going to counteract each other. And then that'll mean I'm just going to be able to dictate when the fighting happens, and he won't have anything to block me in with. So we'll see how that works out. Over on this side, you can see my werewolves do decide to charge out into the Brox rather than eat the charge from them, because I'd rather not face their thunderous charge. So I'd rather get the first hit in, maybe get lucky and take them out. A lucky hit. But of course their nerve is very high, being berserkers, so it didn't work out that way. And my wraiths are just chilling. Like I said, I'm just using delay tactics over here. And my skeletons have taken a bit of damage. I think that was from the artillery. So it's been fairly accurate. This fight's still going on. His berserker is going to probably lose in the long run, because of course my vampire is going to be getting 2 wounds back every time I do damage to him. So it's just going to be a war of attrition there. So still my plan is just hold up this really expensive block into the corners, which are the least valuable board sections. Over here, okay, this is where he goes in. He charges everything into the skeletons, I think, and he moves his other units up into range of the zombie legions. So he positions them in such a way so I'm not going to be able to double charge any of them. I'm not going to be able to get any flank charges on them with my legions, because he's got them right side by side. So that's obviously the best move for him, because you don't want to get double charged by a legion, but it does mean I'm going to get the charges off, but I was always going to anyway because of the speed advantage. This unit here is obviously going to take a charge from the cavalry, but again, it was always going to happen eventually. So he's just deciding it's going to be now, probably because of that vampire chilling behind him, who's going to start eating things. So he's felt the arrival of that vampire and thought, you know what, it's time to get this brewing. So he goes into the skeletons. I don't think he actually kills them there, or he might do in a minute. Let's have a look. Okay, over here, his flying berserker lord actually leaves that combat because he's got fed up, and he charges into the Pegasus vampire with his Brox instead. That's going to be quite an interesting matchup, I think. And you can see my wraiths have actually backed away. So it's obvious what I'm doing here. I am just delaying him as long as possible, avoiding the fight. And I think my skeletons are just off screen there, just staying out of charge range of his steel behemoth and such. There you can see how he avoided the double charge there. There was no way I could pivot that unit to get a flank charge in there, which I probably would have liked to do, because their nerve is pretty decent, these dwarves. But these 2 zombie legions, with those upgrades on them, and I've got the necromancers behind for Bane Chant, then they can dish out a serious amount of pain anytime you're rolling 40 dice, especially this unit here that's hitting on 4s. So on average, you're going to get 20 hits there. And if I get them Bane Chanted as well, I think these dwarves are only defense 4, so then 20 hits wounding on 3s. I'm going to do quite a bit of damage on this unit particularly. Not so much here, because these guys are hitting on 5s, but we shall see. And look at that. Soul Reavers and the vampire, who had eaten the flame belcher in the previous turn, he joined in the charge into this block of shield breakers that was there, that big horde, and they just minced them in one go with the aid of the vampire. The battle drill's still alive though, he's going to be annoying. And as predicted, this unit of zombies did really well, just annihilated that horde. So this is a really devastating turn for him, because as you can see as well, this zombie legion here wavered that horde, and then they failed their headstrong next turn. So yeah, they weren't able to countercharge, and they've got a lot of damage on them, so they are just going to get minced next turn. The zombie legions are still untouched as well, so that is really the nightmare scenario for those dwarves. I'm just completely wiping out the center and the right flank of the table, and everything for him that's of any worth is on the left. So his battle driller, I'm not really worried about that right now, but it's going into the zombie flank. It's not going to do much. Over here, you can see it's a bit of a slugfest between the Brox and the Vampire on a Pegasus, which is lasting a little bit longer. The Wraiths have moved even further away. This was another incident where I was kind of messing up with their pivoting ability. I think I could have possibly got them slightly closer to the board edge, but I wouldn't have been able to turn them all the way around, which is where I wanted them to be, because I wanted them to avoid any flank charges from this guy here, mainly. So I wanted them facing that way. So I pivoted them 90 degrees to face this edge here, moved them over there, pivoted them 90 degrees again. So they're in the same place, but the same place as in along this line here, which I'm marking with my arrow, but facing the opposite direction. So they're not going to be so vulnerable to attack. Also, it means he's not going to be able to get multiple charges in on it, because it's out of range of the steel behemoth, and he's going to be so occupied killing them, he might not be able to take them down in one hit, so it's just tying him up for even longer. And yes, we can still see that they're wavered. I think the audience were fully aware of that. We didn't need a second picture to prove that point. I think maybe that was just to point out the fact that they failed their headstrong tests, so they remained wavered. And over there you can see that my Vampire and Pegasus does actually go down to the Brox, but they've taken a bit of damage, and then he manages to get his Flying Berserker Lord into my Wraiths, but he's not putting too much damage on them. He's only got 2 points on them so far, so it's going to be a bit more of a tough nut to crack than he was anticipating, perhaps. And he is going to be able to start marching towards my central, really valuable scoring area now. So, with that in mind, I don't overcommit. This zombie unit, of course, do actually manage to, I think it's actually this one, I charged into the flank of that shield breaker horde and just completely obliterated them. So they're gone. This zombie unit then pivoted to face his central scoring zone to move into there, and then because he's got so many points, making a beeline for my central area, which would be worth 2 points to him, I'm moving back the really expensive Soul Reaver cavalry and the expensive upgraded zombie legion back into that area, just so I've got a lot of points in there. So it's going to be difficult for him to claim it, and it's going to be impossible for him to reach his own central area with enough units to counteract the expensive nature of this unit here, because they're all tied up right in my bottom left-hand corner. His battle drill is still alive, but I think it's been wavered there by the vampire, and my necromancers are just chilling. His standard bearers could be a nuisance. And if you look in the corner there, you can see the battle still rages on. I actually killed his Berserker Lord with them, which is why they life leached a wound back. They're now down to 1 wound. And his Brox are probably going to be able to eat them for breakfast, probably, but they have taken a bit of damage. And then he's got 3 things here. The battle drill won't be able to score because it's an individual, but his King on a Large Beast and the Steel Behemoth are worth quite a lot of points, but not as much as my Soul Reaver Cavalry and Zombie Legion combined. So he just doesn't have enough points to control my central zone, because I've been cautious and made sure they moved back in there when the time was right. And you can see, I think this was actually my turn 7. I just moved everything really far forward, trying to get a surge, because his thinking was, there's no point going for, he only had 1 available charge to him, and it was the King on Large Beast into the front of the Soul Reavers. If he went for that, and he got really lucky, he could have killed them, and then maybe held more points in this area than me, but then I would have been able to surge his King on a Beast with the Zombie Legion, and he probably wouldn't have killed them anyway, and they would have countercharged him, maybe got a multi-charge on him and killed him, which would have given me a larger winning margin. So he decided he was basically going to concede when it went to turn 7 and just chill out over here and avoid being killed to preserve his tournament points, which is probably wise, looking at the odds of that possibly working out for him. It was very, very unlikely he was going to succeed there. And my Zombie Legion did actually go for a last-minute comedy long-range surge into the King, but they didn't make it. So that's how it's going to end, with him controlling that area there. So that's 1 point for him. Him controlling the top left as well with his artillery. So that's 1 point for him. So that's 2. But this zombie legion up there control his central area, so that's worth 2 for me. And my lower central area, as we established, is controlled by these 2 units here. So there's 1 point for me. So it's 3-2 on victory points, and that's a win for me. And I did actually kill quite a bit, and he didn't kill all that much, really. I've still got all my expensive units still alive. So there's the last picture. Right, there it is. So the overall points for that game, let's see, I had remaining, I think he only killed about 550-ish points he killed. So not very much. Like I said, all my expensive stuff was still alive, and I killed just over 1,000 points. So about half his army, and the margin of victory points was just enough for me to boost my score by 2 points, so it was a 17-3 win. So 2 decent wins back to back. That one was a really good win. That might be my biggest win. I can't remember whether I've ever had an 18-2 in a tournament, but 17-3 might well be my biggest win. And I think strategically, I pretty much got that one right. I'm not sure whether we actually used our reroll tokens in that game. I don't think we actually needed to. I think he might have used his on something and it failed. I think he might have used it on his Headstrong with that Dwarf Shieldbreaker Horde, but still failed. And I didn't use mine at all because there was just no need, because I didn't do any really poor one-off dice rolls. So I just held on to it until the end in case I needed it for any ridiculous luck in the last turn or so. So I'm doing quite well now, 2 back-to-back wins, and I'm probably heading towards the upper tier of the tournament. It's only that absolute massacre that I took in the first game that's letting me down right now. But I think I usually take 1 game to warm up in tournaments. The first game is usually my weakest performance. I'd have to go back and check the others, but I think that's right. I usually get better as the day goes on, as I get more into my zone of tactical tournament mastery, if you will. So let's have a look at the chat. Is anyone actually talking about Kings of War in there? I'm sure I heard someone mention Chuck Norris in there. I don't think that's related. Dave Kitely is apparently painting a Berserker Lord on boar as we speak. Well, there you go. Berserker Lords, the high nerve, pretty damn tasty if you ask me. Okay, let's jump back to the game. So the 4th game was the invade scenario, and I predicted I would come up against somebody in round 4 who had been doing well on the top tables and then had just taken a beating because he'd come up against another really good player in round 3. And I think that was the case. I think this guy was actually really good. And I think he did say that he lost his previous game, so he slipped back down and I was on the way up. So I was hoping that trend was going to continue. So the invade scenario, of course, is to get as many points as you can into the opponent's half of the table, entirely into their half. So if you've got 1 millimeter of your base just clipping the center of the table, then they don't count. So there can be some last turn shenanigans in this scenario, and individuals count for half. So I was very glad that I brought a Pegasus vampire and not just 2 individual vampires, because that could be important. He was playing goblins, and the notable feature for this game is that he brought a goblin sharp stick legion. So it's going to be legion on legion crime going on here. So this is my right flank, where I've got my 2 vampires together. I think this is the first time I've actually deployed them so close to each other thus far, because they've only got 1 other inspiring model in the army. So I did spread them out a bit earlier. But for this game, I decided to put them together with the Soul Reapers. This is a really hard-hitting flank over here, because I'm thinking if they break through a flank, they're really expensive, particularly the Pegasus Vampire and the Soul Reapers. So if they break through on the right, they're going to just be kind of chilling in his half of the table with really expensive units, which is, of course, the objective. So just try to punch a hole in that side. Maybe the Wraiths can follow as well, because they're not that cheap. And the Zombie Legions and Skeletons are going to kind of hold the center as we look over to the other side. So the center hoping to be held by these big, kind of sturdy, solid, but overall kind of squishy units. It's weird to call them squishy and solid at the same time, but they are going to rack up damage. They just have to have a lot of damage on them before they can be destroyed. The Necromancer's chilling in there as well. And then on my left flank, I've got the Werewolves, who are just going to be used mainly as a distraction, and if he doesn't focus on them, I'll try and use them as a bit of a flanking force. So, getting a look at his army here. This is his as I look at it, it's his right flank, so this is opposite all my elite stuff. So he's got a small unit of flea bags, he's got some sharp sticks there, which are going to negate... they might be rabble, actually. I can't tell, because some of them have spears. I can't remember. They may have been rabble. Then he's got a bigot, I think, on a flea bag there, 2 war trombones on this side, a mincer, and a king on a chariot. He has a really, really high amount of units in his army. Because that's barely anything. That's barely any portion of his army, but it's still quite a sizable amount of units. As we look in the middle, there is the Sharp Stick Legion, which is going to come face to face with my zombie legions at some point. So that's going to be an epic showdown, and people were pumped to see the outcome of that. There's his 3rd war trombone, which is the pretty standard loadout for goblin armies nowadays. 3 war trombones, they pretty much auto-include if you have them. I've only got 1, so I don't really have that choice. He's got a troll bruiser, troll horde, troll regiment, and another mincer. Then I think he's got a wizard back there, and a horde of spitters as well for some ranged power, and then some, what are they called? The little annoying units. They're not called flea bags when they're not being ridden by something. More beasts, I think. Yeah, that's it. So I think those are more beasts, represented by squigs, of course. And that might be all of his army. No, it's not. He's got some more flea bags, a bigger unit on that side opposite my werewolves, and he's got his other, I think that's another bigot there. So, as you can see, it's heading for that almighty showdown, although there is an obstacle there, that wall, and there's a bit of impassable terrain just off camera to the right. So that's kind of hindering the possibility of just a head-on charge between the 2 armies. Because you can see there's another piece of impassable terrain here, so I wasn't able to deploy like in a straight line all the way across without hitting something impassable. So it's going to be a little bit squished because these armies take up so much space on the table, which you would think for invade is going to make it really interesting, because we're not going to be able to just maneuver around each other's armies to get into the opposition half. It really is just going to be a case of smash in the middle until everything's dead, and whatever's left is just going to walk over the center line into the opposing half, you would think. Of course, my plan to punch a hole in his right flank and then come round the other side with the flying vampires and such, we'll see how that works out. So, over on this side, I've parked my Soul Reaver cavalry in the woods because, of course, I want to be able to charge through the woods, so you have to be in them to see through them. And they have the Caterpillar Potion, so they're not going to be too bothered at all by the fact they're just charging through some woods. My 2 vampires slightly to the left, and they're going to be able to charge as well before he is. The only unit he's got that's faster than mine would be his cavalry unit there, the flea bags. But if he were to just charge into my Soul Reavers, he would be hindered, and then he would just get absolutely smashed on the counter charge. So he's moved up his war trombones behind, and you will see that that move may cost him in a moment, because the fact that I brought a height 3 flying vampire means I can see over all these units around here, and I can actually see to all these things at the back. So I could charge whatever I feel like out of that lot. So we'll see what happens there, and yes, I decided to take out one of the war trombones because that was going to leave me in a position where nothing could actually charge me as long as I overran a couple of inches, which I did. I think if I'd overrun 1 inch, he may have had a possible charge with the mincer, which would have been really bad news. But I did overrun, I think it was 2 inches, so they're just out of sight. His war trombone is going to be able to turn around and trombone me in the rear, but I'm not overly concerned about that. I don't think he's going to take it out in 1 hit. And then you can see here that my vampire has gone into his flea bags there, and my Soul Reaver cavalry have gone into his unit there, which are probably rabble if I've charged them with cavalry. I'm going to assume they're rabble. So those aren't going to go well for him. You can see he took a lot of wounds actually, but I don't think I killed either of those units. And I tried to surge these zombies up into that bigot, but didn't quite make it. But at least they're blocking off this area, so there's not going to be any kind of shenanigans going on around here. I don't want anything like, for example, the Troll Bruiser making his way over here and getting any sneaky flank action on anything, which at the moment he isn't able to do. But blocking up that area should be okay. Over here, he's kind of ignoring my werewolves, actually. I can't charge him because there's impassable terrains here, his fleabag unit, so he's just staring at the flank of my skeletons. So he's kind of encircling a little bit here, which I don't like the look of at all, but I've got the werewolves who are going to be able to do something, I'm hoping. And he's still got his bigot there, and I think he's just measuring the movement for that now, because he's wary of my werewolves, of course. You have to be wary of werewolves, tee-hee-hee. Then, moving on. Okay, over here, he gets a double charge with his cavalry and his king on a chariot into my vampire. But they don't kill it, which is nice, because that would have been bad. And I'm pretty sure his goblin rabble horde did no damage at all on the countercharge to my soul reavers. So they're going to retain their thunderous charge for next turn. So that was a bit of bad luck on his part there. And you can see that his legion of sharpsticks have actually charged into my zombie legion. Wow. He's turned the trombone round to obviously trombone the rear of the Pegasus vampire. Now I'm pretty sure they didn't do any damage to these guys, but I'll have to check on the next couple of images just to see. So of course this is the moment everyone was waiting for. He went through an obstacle, so he is going to be hindered. So he just put the fence on top of the unit just to mark where it's supposed to be, so we didn't forget. And over on this side, he charged his more beasts into my skeletons, and they don't have many attacks actually, those. So he didn't do much to them, but he is pinning them, and then he's going to be able to come into the flank here with some of those units. He's kind of abandoning the werewolves at this point. I think he's just decided, you know what, they're not worth it. I'm just going to go and take the center, crunch everything, and just march straight through and ignore those pesky werewolves. Because he has got his spitter horde up there as well, who can shoot at them. Then you can see the aftermath here. If you looked at the thumbnail for this video, or if you looked at the opening image of the video, you will have seen that I got a front charge with this zombie legion onto his legion, and then I got a flank charge with this legion, with, I think that was assisted by some surging. So a double legion charge into a legion. So of course, anyone that saw that was immediately enthused by the magnificent sight. So 40 dice in the front, 80 in the flank, 35 damage, well over the nerve. Didn't roll a double one, off they went. However, it did leave me with very limited options here. I could only pivot in a very specific way so that the units weren't overlapping each other. So this unit has to look in this direction to stop them being charged in the flank by all the trolls, but they are going to take a lot of troll attacks in the front, and he does have other units for flank charges as well. He's got a troll bruiser up there. He still hasn't decided what to do with his fleabag cavalry on the left flank, and they're within range to charge as well. So that unit has already taken 5 damage, so they could be minced next turn, made absolute mincemeat of. But I've still got this other legion as backup. George Kirk says, Sharpsticks so dead they took the obstacle with them. Yes, they did. I think we actually put it back after this picture was taken. On this side, you can see that I moved my wraiths up there as well to join in the fight, and I'm just kind of wiping through his units now. So that rabble has departed. He's turned around a lot of these guys to kind of threaten the Pegasus, who has just flown away. So the Mincer is, I think, I can't remember whether he had a charge on the wraiths or not. We'll find out, I suppose, in a minute, won't we? With the line of sight, it was going to be very close. Vampire is fighting his king on the chariot. Yep, there's the old Pegasus vampire just flown away, cackling maniacally, running away from the threat range, because of course his 20-inch charge range is going to make him very, very dangerous if I can get him in behind all those trolls in the middle. And yes, it was as I feared. So he didn't actually send the small troll unit because he didn't have space, because this unit wouldn't have been able to get into the flank with those trolls there as well. So we ended up charging them into the skeletons, combining with the more beasts. And in the middle here, the trolls in the front, fleabags in the side. So that's going to be goodbye Zombie Legion, I think, because that's a lot of attacks coming in. The trolls have 18, and there's going to be a lot coming in from them as well. The other Zombie Legion is just getting lightly toasted, I think, by the War Trombone. The Troll Bruiser is just kind of chilling there as well. And he was going to have to decide which of those units he wanted to be charged, because I'm going to be able to shuffle them a bit sideways and then surge them forward in my turn into one of them. So he decided that he was going to put the Trombone slightly ahead, so that would take the hit. Because I think it's just worth less points. That's the thinking there. And then he's going to be able to charge something with the Bruiser later on. And this is bad for me. Look at that. He wavers my Pegasus Vampire with a really good nerve roll. He only put 4 damage on it, but still wavered it. So he must have got like 11 on the dice. So that's not fun at all, because that vampire being wavered, it's more of a big deal than an individual vampire being wavered, because an individual can of course just turn to face whichever way it wants before charging off. This guy is kind of locked in position now, so next turn he's not going to be able to do that much. He's going to be able to do a little bit of backing up or rotating if he wants, but that's about it. So his lack of maneuverability compared to an individual, combined with being wavered, could take him partially out the game. And you can see one legion's been wiped there, and he's now going in for the kill after I took out the war trombone, which of course you triple your attacks when attacking a war machine. So zombie legion tripling its attacks. Maybe he was just trying to run down the clock for me there by putting that as a sacrificial lamb, because I had to roll 120 attacks against that war trombone. So needless to say, they killed it. But then of course his troll horde can go in there, and the bruiser is available as well. And it's already taken a bit of damage, this legion, so that could be about to explode as well. My soul reavers have turned round after their successful fight up there, and his mincer though is kind of available to just sprint towards my half of the table, which he might do, just because of course that is the objective. Can't forget that. Then we've got over here, I think he took out one unit of skeletons with all this, and then they've moved into position to get flank charges in on the rest of my stuff. These skeletons have just moved in to block his cavalry charge in the flank of this legion, and I've got my necromancers down there. My werewolves actually don't take too much damage from shooting on their way in, because I was able to move so fast I was able to get out of his firing arc, which meant he had to turn, which meant -1 to hit, so he was hitting them on 6s. So he only ended up doing 1 damage, couldn't waver them or anything, and then I was able to get a charge in on them and do some damage. So they're not going to be able to shoot anymore. I'm not sure if I'm actually going to be able to kill them, because their nerve is quite high, considering they're a horde. So we shall see. Over here, my vampire, who was chilling over here, he's working his way back. This guy has a much better chance of nipping into the enemy half, or coming back into my half, should I say, killing something and then jumping back again to be a scoring unit. Mr. Pegasus really wants to stay in this half now, because it's quite late in the game, and if he moves out, he could get stuck in my own half and then not score any points for me. So I'm going to be careful what I do with him. This vampire, though, can be a bit more liberal with his attacking intent. And look at this, he gets crunching combo charge on my zombie legion here. He's got the small unit of flea bags, which I didn't ever kill off. They just kind of ran away from the fight and then got in here into the rear, which is painful, of course. Double charge in the front, and I think that unit's about to get deleted now. And he's got multi-charge on this unit of skeletons as well. So let's see what's left after that fight. Yep, look at that. Legion has been deleted, but my necromancers are just getting in the way of things. I just park them in his way. If he doesn't manage to kill it, then he's going to be stuck partially in his own half, maybe at the end of the game. So we'll see how that goes. He's also got charges in on my vampire, who I think charged into the rear of the mincer, I think. Didn't kill it though, so it's going to counter-charge, but it's losing its big weapon, which is of course its thunderous charge, so it's probably not going to do any damage. Then my soul reavers are just moving into his half, just because they're so expensive. They don't want to get stuck anywhere but in his scoring section, which is his half of the table. And my Pegasus vampire charged the troll bruiser and ate it for dinner. So there's that guy dead. My Pegasus vampire is not completely out of the woods, but no one can actually charge him, because the trolls are facing the wrong way. Then down here, those skeletons are actually holding up for the moment, and that necromancer is blocking them. This necromancer quite comically blocks them as well, and I don't think he actually dies yet. Up there you can see he's sent a bigot back to help his spitter horde fight against the werewolves, which is going to be a bit of a slugfest still. And of course, while they're in his half, they're just scoring points as well at the end of the game if they're still alive. So they're just quite happy to continue that fight. A lot of his units are working their way back up here now, because a lot of my units are kind of poised to strike at his rear, like this Pegasus vampire. Yep, this fight continues. I actually waver that unit there, which means I'm probably not going to lose my werewolves anytime soon, because they've only taken 1 damage. A bigot in the flank isn't going to finish them off. You wouldn't have thought so, at least. And then over here, I've kind of parked a lot of my stuff. Well, you can see that those guys are dead. So actually, I think, let me just see if there's any more pictures here. Okay, that's the last picture. So I'm going to tell you what happened because it was so quick and dramatic that I didn't actually take any pictures of it. But what happened was the Pegasus vampire right here, he actually got wavered by a war trombone that was around here and then got killed subsequently, I believe. But that wavered the Pegasus vampire, which meant he was stuck in a position to be multi-charged by a couple of units. And that's exactly what happened. He got charged by 2 units. My vampire got charged. This was in his turn 6. But heading into turn 6, he only had about 1.5 minutes left on the clock. So he declared 2 charges, or 3 charges onto 2 separate units. I think he did the other combat first, didn't manage to kill either the vampire or whatever it was. It may have been a necromancer that was in his way that he needed to kill, actually. And that, I think he might have killed that necromancer. Let's just check, actually. Yeah, it's not there, so he did. So he did get the trolls into my half, so he had to do that first. Then he had a combo charge on this Pegasus vampire here, but as he was rolling to wound, because he had so many attacks to do, because he charged with 2 units instead of 1, he had so many attacks that his time actually ran out. So he timed out mid-attack, so he couldn't get round to rolling the nerve roll for this vampire, who actually took more damage than that, but we didn't get round to actually allocating it because he was rolling the wound dice as the buzzer went off. And of course, then we just checked to find out exactly what happens at that point, because neither of us, I don't think either of us had ever timed out before or had an opponent timeout. So I still had the potential to get a turn 7, and he just wouldn't be able to have a turn 7, really. So what happened was we rolled, and it did go to a turn 7. So I thought, okay, this is perfect, because at the moment I'm winning, and I'm still going to win no matter what happens now, because that vampire survived, and the units fighting him was locked in his own half. He's got no time left, so he can't do anything with his turn 7. So as long as I don't accidentally go into my own half with any units, I'm going to win. So I can just kill the units that were here. So I charged in my vampire and my soul reavers, and this vampire as well, who wasn't wavered anymore. So they all just killed that big block of units he had here fighting. One of them was definitely the... Let's see what's missing, actually. So it's not the trolls. Both troll units are still there. So it's the big unit of flea bags. They're gone. And something else. But the big unit of flea bags was definitely one of them. I can't remember what the other unit was. It may have been... No, it's not the more beasts. They're still there. Can't remember what it was, but it was definitely 2 units. One of them was the Fleabag cavalry, and they got killed. The other unit got killed. All my stuff, I think the central table line is about here where I'm moving the arrow now, partway down this obstacle. So I've got all these expensive units in his half. All my surviving models were in his half. All his surviving models were in my half. So yeah, we just kind of smashed through each other's lines and then ended up in each other's halves, and he ran out of time. So if he hadn't run out of time, he may well have killed the Pegasus vampire. So let's revert to let's have a look at the old final scores and see what happened then. So in order to win a game of Invade, you need to have 20% more points, I believe, than your opponent in the scoring areas. So I had, so for a 2,000 point game, then of course, or it's 10%. So for a 2,000 point game, that's 200 points. So I needed to have more than 200 points more than him in a scoring area to win. I actually had 12 points more than the threshold required. So if I had like 1 less upgrade on any of these units, or if my Pegasus vampire died, if he hadn't timed out and he'd been able to kill it, then I think it's so expensive that he would have actually got a narrow win instead. But because that survived, because he timed out, I had enough points in there to get the win by 12 points. Otherwise, it would have been a draw. So that is about as close as you can possibly get. And in terms of kills, I killed 1,200 points. He killed roughly 1,000. So I killed a bit more. But again, he would have killed more if he'd killed my Pegasus vampire, because then, of course, I would have been less in a position to kill his remaining units as well if he hadn't timed out. So I ended up with a 16-4 victory. So that one could easily have gone the other way. If he had 1 more minute to roll dice, that could have completely turned the game on its head. But that's the problem with playing a game with a huge amount of units like that. He had, I think, maybe the highest amount of drops at the tournament, definitely more drops than me. And a lot of them, they fill up a lot of space, so it's kind of fiddly to move around your own units. I didn't have many drops at all. I think I only had about 10 drops, maybe. And the fact I cut down individuals really saved me as well here, because the Pegasus Vampire scoring so many points, because he doesn't halve himself like this vampire does. So, very, very, very close. 16-4 wins. That's 3 wins in a row to end the tournament. And as a result of that, when the final placings were read out, I actually finished in 5th position, which, out of 16, is pretty damn good, especially when you consider the fact that I lost 19-1 in the first game. I think we can all agree that is a stellar comeback in tournament terms. I think game 1, I just made too many ridiculous mistakes with taking risks, and my opponent didn't make ridiculous mistakes, which is why people win games and people lose games, because one player makes better moves than the other. So, deserved to lose game 1 for taking too many ridiculous risks that didn't pay off. Out of the other games, I would say game 2, well, actually, they were all pretty close. Game 3 was the one where I got the biggest winning margin. Game 4 was literally on a knife edge. If he hadn't run out of time, could have gone the other way, but we'll never know because he never got to roll nerve to see if he would have killed the vampire. I'm not sure. Wavering it might not have been enough if he was just running out of time. Then in game 2, yeah, that hinged on a couple of dice rolls. It was the double 1 on the Wraiths after he'd used his reroll in game 2 that tied up 2 of his really expensive units and stopped them chasing after the tokens. And then, of course, the turn roll went against me in that one, which could have cost me big time, but it didn't, luckily. So overall, I think my luck throughout the day pretty much evened out, I would say, for the most part. Having the rerolls in there, it does it throws a spanner into your mental workings, definitely. It gives you a lot more to ponder on, but you're not so terrified of getting that double 1. So it does take a tiny bit of the drama out of the game, which is why I'm not entirely sold on the idea. I do like it, obviously, because it's for a good cause. There's a whole charity element to it. And as long as both players have it, it's okay, but it does take away that slight nervousness that you get whenever you're rolling those 2 dice. Because it's very, very difficult to roll double 1 once. Rolling it twice in a row, very, very, very unlikely. That's for if the unit's inspired. So, no, that's totally wrong. Rolling it twice in a row for the token, rolling the double, the double 6 if it would kill them. Rolling a high roll to kill them off the unit if they're inspired, then what am I even trying to say here? I think I've just muddled myself. Let me ponder on this for a moment. Okay, so when you roll the double 1, there is the obvious nervousness, the potential for rolling the double 1. Once you've already rolled it, that's it. But because you've only got 1 shot at it. But in this tournament, of course, you've got a second shot at it, which is, it's like the kind of, I'm trying to compare it to the nerves that you have when your opponent is rolling to take off one of your units, and they could roll high, but you've got inspiring there, so it's not quite as scary. It's like that cushion, so you're not quite as nervous, is what I'm getting at here. I think I explained that suitably in the end there. Oracle of God says 5th. I would have never predicted a finish in the single digits. Yes, neither would I after that first game. Renegade Bond, damn it, I missed the beginning. I'll have to wait till the end now. Yes, you will. Then you'll have to go back and watch all of it in excruciating detail. If you want to skip the first 20 minutes or so, nothing exciting happened there. There certainly wasn't a game where I got absolutely annihilated due to some very foolish play on my part. That definitely didn't happen, as long as you ignore the first 20 minutes of the video. Let's see. George Kirk apparently won 1 game because of turn 7. Would have been a draw otherwise. Yeah, that turn 7 is so huge in tournaments. The fact it's just a 50-50 dice roll, and really you often have a choice in the final turn. Do I go all out and pray that the game ends now, or do I go all out and pray that it doesn't end now? If you kind of hedge your bets and go 50-50 and your opponent goes all out, then it's going to go one way or the other. So you're really leaving it up to the flip of a coin almost. So those games that are really, really close often are decided by the turn 7. So Darren Parks isn't sure he's keen on those turn 7s. Yeah, I can see an argument for taking them out, definitely. I do prefer the double 1-inch to the turn 7, because the turn 7 is just a 50-50 that can decide the game. A double 1 can decide the game sometimes, but it's unlikely to come up. It's definitely way less than 50-50. Auric Lovegod, Andy, you always seem to play the same armies. I think you are really experienced against, though. I do seem to come up against undead a lot. Maybe that's just because they feature a lot in tournaments. I've played dwarves a lot, obviously, because my regular opponent, Mr. Sam, plays dwarves quite a bit. And what else have I played a lot? I don't think I've played too many other armies a great deal. There's some I haven't played much at all. The likes of Forces of Nature I haven't played that much. I haven't played Varangar that much. Haven't played against a bit of elves, not a huge amount of elves. Haven't played against goblins that many times. The last few tournaments I've played against them a couple of times, but not that much in the grand scheme of things. Orcs I haven't played against that much. Abyssal Dwarves I don't see. I think barely anyone plays Abyssal Dwarves as far as I can see. Same goes for Orcs. A couple of the newer armies from the expansion books, like the Kingdom of Raudria, whatever they're called, the Halflings, haven't played them at all. Night Stalkers, I don't have a huge amount of experience against them. Abyssals, not a huge amount against them. So yeah, I do tend to play Undead a ton. I've played Empire of Dust quite a few times as well. But I think Undead are probably the army I've faced the most out of any. It may just be because they're the most taken. Herd, I think I've faced Herd only once, and I'm not sure it was a complete Herd army. I think it was allies with something. So I think that's the only time I played them. George Kirk says Undead popular because they're so powerful. That could well be, but I don't think any army in Kings of War is overpowered. I think every army has a chance to squeeze a little bit of cheese out. Everything has something that's not necessarily an auto-include, but something that you see more often than not. But I don't think anything is broken. I wouldn't say any of the armies are broken. Undead may be just more difficult to play against because you have more to think about. Because of the surge, your positioning, the way you would normally position against any other army is totally different compared to Undead, because you have to factor in so many other things. You can leave your flanks somewhat open as long as no one can charge them. You can leave a bare space in your flank against other armies as long as there's no one looking directly at them. Against Undead, you can't even do that because of the ability to surge. So you have to really plan multiple moves ahead against them. So I think some people just don't take that into account sometimes. Maybe that catches some people out. At the higher level, though, I don't think you would see too many people being caught out by surge shenanigans. Usually people just take a risk, thinking, well, if I could kill that unit, then I can overrun and not be in range to be surged against. But then they don't kill it, and then they're stuck, and they just get surged in the rear by a huge mob of zombies. So maybe that's a thing that catches out the more veteran types. It's just the risk-taking. You have to be so much more careful against Undead. Apparently the Brotherhood are rubbish. I don't think I've played against them. I don't think so. Basileans, I don't think I've ever seen them, let alone played against them. I might have seen them at one tournament. Definitely not more than that. The Sea People, Skeleton Flower says, I assume that's the Trident Realms, is that? I've seen them not very often at all that I can think of. Yeah, so I would like to see bigger army variety. Of course, I've only got my Undead and my Goblins, and I've taken them both to several tournaments. I'm kind of in Undead mode at the moment because I've been doing relatively well with them. So I want to make more tweaks to my army. As far as what I'm going to change, I think I want to add a third Legion, definitely. Just not even for any tactical reasons. I just think it'll be funny to see that many zombies on the table. So I'm looking at getting more zombies right now. I've got a corpse cart as well, which I can use as unit filler. And I've got another chariot base that I can make some kind of little zombie diorama on there, which would just mean that there isn't spare movement tray space because the size of a corpse cart isn't the same. It's not divisible by the size of the regular zombie bases, is what I'm trying to say. So I would have to have something of equal size on there just to stop there being big black holes in the movement tray. So if I model some zombies on a chariot base, that could do that. Then, other than the triple zombie legion list, I'm not sure I've fully got my head around using the wraiths correctly yet. They did well, but that was mainly down to luck in this tournament. I haven't really had a really solid performance with them yet, as far as I'm concerned. Pegasus Vampire, really good for scoring, but I did find him somewhat difficult to maneuver into position because I'm so used to individuals being much more versatile. They just spin on the spot, fly off wherever they feel like. I'm thinking of taking maybe a horse-mounted vampire, maybe a flying horse-mounted vampire, because then you can see over height 1 units and you've got more of your pick of charges, but then of course your base is bigger, so you can't fit into as many spaces. So it's an interesting one. There's still tinkering to be done. The Soul Reaver Cavalry, in this tournament, they did me well. Apart from maybe game 1, they didn't do that much. But even then, they killed a unit there, and it was just my bad play that got them killed, I think. But in the other games, they seemed to do quite well. The previous tournament, they didn't do as well, I think. But they are so expensive that you can fit in 2 solid units for the price of that 1 unit. So it's going to be difficult. As far as what else I could ditch, I'd like those cheap skeleton units. But like you saw with the old push scenario, or anything that requires tokens, being able to take tokens on the little 90-point skeleton units with their nerve 16 means they're not just going to get 1 lightning bolt in the last turn to kill them, which is what often happens when I used ghouls for that purpose. I used a ghoul troop, which was 65 points. And yeah, the ghouls' defense is actually lower as well. They just have the ability to just move faster, which is what they're better for. So if I was going to include ghouls again, it would be purely as a screen, I think. Or maybe just charging onto, or moving at the double, should I say, onto objectives in the last turn, rather than just sitting on them for the whole game, whereas skeletons seem more suited to that purpose. They're just overall pretty solid skeleton regiments, I think, for only 90 points. A valuable part of my list, I think. I'm not sure whether I need 2. Maybe I would ditch 1 of them if I want to take something else. I might need to. If I want to include that 3rd Legion, I'm going to have to leave something out, whether it's the Soul Reavers or Wraiths or Skeletons or combinations of those things. If I'm taking 3 Legions, I would definitely need 2 Necromancers still, because I need all that surging ability to use them to their full potential. But I'm just looking forward to doing it. There is the option to have a list that's really ridiculously themed with 5 vampires or so, and then just nothing but really cheap zombie regiments in there to fill up the rest of the points and just give me some other units. But I'm not sure how effective that would be, because the vampires themselves aren't putting out that many attacks. So some of them would have to be flying on beasts like the Pegasus and the Dragon, and then they lose some of their maneuverability and they can be recharged because they wouldn't be backed up because the zombies are so slow. They'd be stuck on my half of the table for the whole game, only moving 5 inches a turn. So I'm not sure about that one. I do like the idea of a triple or even quadruple Legion, though. So if I could put out a quadruple zombie Legion in a tournament, I think that would be hilarious. I don't know how well it'd do because it'd be so big and unwieldy, and it would take up a big chunk of my points, so it'd be limited in what else I could take. But can you imagine the look on my opponent's face when they see 4 zombie Legions opposite them? There are certain lists that would just do nothing against that, as far as I'm concerned. Anything that's really elite with few attacks but powerful attacks, things like giants. Anyone that takes a ton of giants would hate to come up against that army, because you know giants with their multiple attacks, it's only random. So they could just get 8 or 9 attacks, and what's that going to do to a zombie Legion, really? Even if you wound and hit with every one, which you're not, because I think giants are only hitting on 4s anyway. So you have to put 16 points of damage onto a zombie Legion before you're even allowed to roll the dice for the nerve test, which is obscenely high. Certain lists would do much better against it. Anyone that took a lot of kind of cheaper troops that don't pay points for getting Crushing Strength 2 or Thunderous Charge 2 or anything like that, but has a ton of attacks. There are certain units out there like that, like other zombie Legions, for example. They would definitely be able to mince through Legions with relative ease. Whether they'd be able to take them out in one go is a different matter. But we shall see. It's worth trying out. the multiple legions thing, I'll have to run it in practice games first to work out the positioning of them, because if they're too close together, they'd be limited on their pivoting and flank charging, surging abilities, and also I would have to dedicate units to guarding their flank. So I'll also think about what inspiring units I have in there as well if I was to spread them out, because the two vampires are known to fly off on their own, away from the main block, and one necromancer isn't really enough. So maybe something like, I think Morgoth, even though he's obscenely expensive, he might actually be very inspiring. So someone like him would probably be perfect. But I think he can only do one spell per turn. So that would only be able to surge one of them. And looking at the chat there, let's see. Skeleton Flower is talking to people about the Sea People army still. And there is the legendary Kings of War player, Mr. Daniel King, has popped in there into the chat. I certainly hope he's been watching this whole video for tips, as he could surely use them after I did actually finish above him in this tournament, even though he is the #1 ranked player. Although I didn't actually face him, so I'm not going to brag about that one too much. So, yeah, he could definitely take tactical tips from a Kings of War 5th place veteran like myself, I'm sure. So I think he's going to be watching this video back to back, especially to get tips on facing undead. And with that, I think the chat's drying up now. We've had a solid number of viewers for this whole thing, so that's pretty sweet. I will just make sure there aren't any other pictures. Nope. So let's just whiz back through them a bit to give people a bit of a refresher course on all those games as we zoom through all these images, and then we're going to pull this one to a close. So if anyone's got any last minute comments they want to get in there before I go off the air, get them in now while I'm scrolling back through all the images. Mickey Genver is apparently having fun. I'm assuming having fun in the chat, since Mickey Genver isn't much of a Kings of War player, so probably isn't taking too much out of this, although people do just love the sound of my voice. There's the Soul Assassin in the chat there. Oh yeah, there's that classic moment with the double one on the Wraiths. That was one of my favourite moments of the day, I have to say. I do love those double ones, even when they go against me. I am a fan of them. They do give you talking points, memorable moments, and that's what war games are all about as far as I'm concerned. Almost back to the start now. Yeah, we don't need to focus too much on this game, do we? Yeah, this game was insignificant. Certainly wasn't an absolute mammoth loss. Almost there. Yeah, there we go. You can see the image of the two legions in the Goblin Legion there, which was a very fun moment for all concerned, I'm sure. And the two zombie legions didn't last much longer after this combat, but it was worth it just to get that visual of legion on legion crime. So the Soul Assassin looks forward to this live video every week, even though he doesn't actually play Kings of War. Well, there's another tournament coming up in, I'm not sure if it's 2 weeks, but it's definitely soon. And I think I'm probably going to take Undead to that one as well, while I'm on a bit of a roll. Maybe the Triple Legion, if I can get some more zombies painted by then. If not, I might do more tinkering. Maybe change around werewolves, might try out zombie trolls again. I haven't used them for a while. Maybe bring back ghouls. We'll see. Maybe the skeleton hordes will come out to play again. Time will tell. So let's leave on this beautiful image of me in the tournament room, chilling like a villain, making tactical decisions. You can see the deep concentration in my mind. You can actually see it now because the hair's gone. So if you've got some kind of X-ray brain vision, you can probably see the cogs just working their way around in there. Although this was game 1, so they weren't working particularly fast. It was more just like, I must kill everything within 2 turns, which wasn't the best strategy. Although I did learn from it, of course, went back to my old, more patient ways for the remaining games, and it worked quite splendidly. So, time to pull this one into the station and shut down the engine, folks. So I'm going to say good night out there, whatever you are.